Well, thank you very much. We're about to start this side event, so can I ask you all to quickly take a seat and possibly turn your phone on silence? Okay, good. So let me start. It is a great pleasure to welcome you all, and I thank you all for your participation to this side event dedicated to the challenges and solution towards coastal climate adaptation and resilience. Now, to put this thing in context, I should say that this event has been jointly organized by the Hellenic Ministry of Environment and Energy and the European Investment Bank in an initiative of an EU-funded project. It is the LIFE-IP AdaptInGR. And we aim this morning to contribute to the global discussion on how to trigger coastal adaptation investments that are sustainable, that is, that can deliver economic benefits and that can be nature positive. And it is a real honor to have been invited to moderate this event. So let me start by introducing our panelists this morning. I have here His Excellency, the Minister of Environment and Energy of Greece, Mr. Thodoros Skylakakis, who will share with us challenges, good practices, and lessons learned towards adapting the long Greek shoreline and the numerous Greek islands. And I have here, my left, His Excellencies, the Deputy Minister of Climate Change, Environment and Energy of Maldives, Mr. Hassan Mohamed, who will bring more insights into climate challenges facing leading tourism destinations, such as the Maldives, and in particular will bring to us the perspective of a small island developing state. And finally, I have here with me Mr. Kyriakos Kakouris, Vice President of the European Investment Bank. The bank is one of the largest lenders for climate action worldwide. Thank you all for being here. We are sorry to have learned that His Excellency, the Minister of Agriculture, Fishery and the Environment of Palau, who was expected to be with us this morning, is not well. This means that we will have a little bit more time to listen from you. And without further ado, let me briefly introduce our conversation. The ocean climate nexus is affecting our coasts, and the scientific projections, unfortunately, for the future are alarming. And this is the reason why this is an important side event, because we need to find sustainable solution to accelerate climate adaptation and build climate resilience in coastal areas. And just to actually recall a little bit the data, the scientific data that we have, the 2019 IPCC special report on ocean and cryosphere and 2022 IPCC report on climate change, impact, adaptation and vulnerability reveal that the global mean sea level has risen by about 0.2 meters since 1901, while project that it will continue to rise at an increasing rate, likely reaching a range between 0.15 and 0.30 meters by 2050, so in the next 3 decades, and a range between 0.28 and a meter, 0.2, by the end of this century. Now, in addition to that, the World Meteorological Organization's State of the Global Climate Report, published just in March 2024, indicated that the global mean sea level reached a record high in 2023. And the increasing sea level rise, together with the climate-induced increase in extreme sea level events, coastal erosion, coastal groundwater, salinization, coastal ecosystem degradation, and so on and so forth, gravely impact our islands, coastal communities, habitats and infrastructure, as well as all coastal dependent economic activities such as tourism that are life for all the coastal communities. This is why we need to accelerate coastal adaptation, and we should have in mind that an important result from the 2023 UNEP adaptation gap report, where it is recalled that adaptation is still underfinanced, and the estimated cost of coastal adaptation is as high as 56 billion US dollars for the next 10 years, and will further increase by 2050. And during this event, we will have the chance to hear and discuss challenges, experiences, solutions for effective coastal adaptation, and hearing the views of both developed and developing countries and financial actors on the effective financial instruments to adapt coastal areas. And let me start with you, Minister Skylakakis. I would like to actually start with you because Greece is a maritime country, and Greece is a leading tourist destination in the Mediterranean. And the IPCC reports warn that the Mediterranean is a climate hotspot, and this is why urgent action is required to adapt your beautiful beaches and your wonderful islands to climate change. Greece has, in addition, experienced very harsh extreme phenomena over the last years, like floods and forest fires. And all of this requires an integrated approach from the planning phase, and downstream remedies are not alone, are not simply enough to deal with that. So I would like to hear from you, what do you think are the key policies you are promoting to address challenges and implement sustainable adaptation measures for the Greek coastline? And in addition, Minister, I would like to hear from you what financial schemes and tools are supporting the implementation of these policies.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for being here. I'm a bit of a host, so I would like to thank for that as well. Let me start by speaking in a blunt way. Adaptation policies have not been integrated in the planning of countries, wider areas like the European Union, or the planet as a whole, for two simple reasons, to the extent that we will need them. For two simple reasons. One reason is that people had the hope that we will need less adaptation, and that's why we're doing all the mitigation efforts. and the climate crisis is coming faster than we expected. Plus, there is an inherent uncertainty into adaptation. The models, essentially we have a new climate. We know that because in Greece, for example, we had a flood that was a 1,000-year event last September, and a second flood in the same area that was 200-year event, and it happened in 1 month. Now, the possibility that this is by chance is 1 to 200,000, it's 0. So we know, even from that 2 events, not all the other events in the world, but even from only those 2 events, that we're in a new climate. And what do we know about that climate? What do we know about it? What climatologists say, which is inherently very inaccurate, plus the experiences that are 2, 3, 5 years, 10 years. So they are not enough to have a sample of what's going to happen. So we know about the new climate, what a guy or a girl standing outside a dark room and seeing through a hole can see. That's what we know about the new climate. That means that we cannot easily adapt because we don't know what kind of money we will need in order to adapt. Now, things that we know. For Greece, and everybody, adaptation is a very local issue. For Greece, things that we know. 1, we need to deal with less water in eastern Greece and our islands. Our eastern islands, the Aegean islands, are going to have far less water. Second, we will get more water, devastating floods that will not stay in the aquifers because it will come in a very short period of time. We had 8 billion cubic meters of water last September in Thessaly. To get out of Thessaly, it would need the Danube for 14 days, literally. But most of it did not end up in the aquifers below. Third thing, our forests are going to be extremely vulnerable. And this will also affect coastal areas because they will have a double erosion. The erosion of the destruction of the forests that come, for example, in Greece up to the sea, and the fact that soil, if you have a destroyed forest, if you have 2 times a pine forest fire within 7 years, the forest is destroyed, then you start losing massively the soil, and the soil will also play a role in the erosion in general. And then you have some extreme weather events, okay, additional, and then you will have heat waves, especially in metropolitan areas, which are even those close to the sea. You're going to have heat waves, and then the sea level rise will come, but this probably will come very slowly. If it comes fast, we are on a different planet. Let's hope that it doesn't happen. But there is a small chance of that as well. So this is the reality. European funds for adaptation, not significant. We haven't budgeted that in. Cost of mitigation, tremendous. Especially now that we move from renewables, which are now mature technology and can work a lot better than fossil fuels. We are moving to other sectors like electrification, transport, etc., which are housing, etc., which are very, 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 very expensive. The economists were saying 4 days ago that only for housing, mitigation and adaptation, or I would say adaptation and mitigation in the planet, we will need in the next 25 years, $25 trillion. We are talking about immense amounts of money, And we also know, if we are political animals, that this is going to create extreme tension, because political tension is created when you have more needs than money to spend. What can we do? The first rule is prevention will save us money. So we need to look into what we really have to do to prevent and go to the most cost-efficient prevention measures. For example, don't build a big dam, make much more investment in mountain small projects that are cost-efficient to delay the water coming down. I will give you one aspect of how to look into efficiency. Be prepared to change your ways. For example, in the tourist areas, it's absolutely possible, and we're talking with TUI about that, to have 30 to 40% less usage of water without affecting the, for tourist purposes, without affecting the quality of service. So we need to think and build based on the fact that we're going to have a lot less water in all our islands. Third, and most important, we need to keep local growth, because this thing is going to need great amounts of money. And if you don't have growth and you don't have local tax revenues, and since all these investments are not global, they are local, adaptation is all local, mitigation is all global. So you will need to keep growth. You will need to have extremely cheap energy to be able to adapt to this new reality. Because, for example, in the Aegean Islands, we will need desalination, and that can only be done with cheap energy. So we will need to keep growth into these coastal areas and not go into a mode that we can preserve. No, we cannot preserve, because we have done as humanity a huge environmental intervention, which is already changing the environment that we live in such a way that we need also to do a huge counter-intervention that will need immense amounts of money to function.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister. And with that, let me go to Deputy Minister Mohamed. And again, we have Maldives as a leading world tourism destination, with your islands and coasts drawing millions of tourists every year, but your islands and your coasts are threatened and in fact already impacted by climate change. But Minister Skylakakis was actually suggesting a key aspect, a key thing that policymakers must have in mind when thinking of policies, and it is the local dimension of adaptation. And it is with respect to that for us will be extremely important to have the views of the specificities of small islands that drive the characteristics, the features of the best policies for coastal adaptation and resilience. And I would like to hear from you what are the lessons learned so far in addressing challenges deriving from coastal adaptation, and to what extent these lessons learned can help in matching better the funding schemes with the needs of small islands, and having in mind the fact that, as we said, Maldives are a world tourism destination. How do you think tourism activities and development can progress together, and how tourism activity and development can become a catalyst for overall adaptation effort?
Thank you. And thank you for this opportunity to be part of the side event. And yeah, hopefully everyone here knows Maldives. We try to promote it pretty well, as the tourism sector is one of our biggest industrial sectors. Just to give as you said, I'll try to focus on the three aspects here, the adaptation part, and then also building climate resilience, and then I'll move on to the tourism sector a little bit. So yeah, to start with the brief introduction of Maldives, it is a very unique country with a big marine ecosystem, and we are roughly around 1,190 islands. Greece has much more, but it's a bit different in the sense also that it's an archipelagic country with the islands are very low-lying. So it's a low elevation coastal zone. The whole country can be considered as one. And so each island itself is a low elevation zone. So in that sense, we are very vulnerable to particularly the triple planetary crisis of climate crisis. And when together with that, we obviously the biodiversity loss, and we do face pollution issues also. But in a sense, we have always been advocating more on the climate aspect, because it is something, the issues we are facing it right now. So in terms of adaptation and building resilience, we need to focus on that more, in the sense because mitigation as a small island developing state, or I think it's more appropriate for this conference, we usually refer to as large ocean states. So so in that sense, we are not contributors. We contribute very an insignificant amount in terms of so mitigation is not a big aspect, but rather all our efforts, or most significant efforts, are on the adaptation side. And these examples of the adaptation investments, there could be this robust infrastructure, and it could also be in the sense of data acquisition management to help the infrastructure, and also decision-making procedures to address the climate crisis. So these can all be adaptation measures that are examples, And in terms of, it is, as you mentioned, the local context, it is very important that we have these adaptation measures, and also building our resilience, but we also educate the locals. We know the history behind them. We know, we understand that these adaptation measures, we communicate well with the local communities, and it's also important to understand the population dynamics, particularly because we are so dispersed. It is logistically, it's always very challenging to implement and even plan for these measures. We have 187 inhabited islands, and even the resorts are around 120, I suppose. It might be a bit more. But yeah, the inhabited islands are where most of these coastal measures are implemented. The resorts, it's usually a bit different because they have access to a larger fund. So and then they usually operate separately. But yeah, in terms of, in that sense, like, yeah, mostly the government's focus on the funding, it is usually in the areas where there's inhabited people and the communities which cannot, support themselves. Then when we are talking about the fundings, again, we have to bear a lot of, it's a lot of stress. And as the minister just highlighted, when there's a lack of funding, then there's tension. When there's lack of money, there's tension, of course. And then if we have to invest so much in adaptation because of our ecosystem and how we are geographically, then we are still a developing state. So it puts stress on other sectors, health, it could be like security. So it's kind of like splitting the pie. So that actually brings in a lot of pressure. So it is very important that we have access to the climate adaptation funds, and then there are also other funds such as biodiversity loss fund with the and also the loss and damage fund. So, and the important thing here is I would say is that we have easy access to them and sufficient access to it, in the sense like it can also be very difficult for island states such as small states such as us to have the resources and to prepare, for example, let's say large documentations with a lot of data, and it can take time and human resources, and which might be a very difficult process. So to have access to these funds in a more streamlined mechanism is always welcomed and something we always advocate for. And there's also an importance in the sense of time, that these funds will be available for us in a particular time frame, because this is it's a very dynamic environment. So we are always we need to take action quickly, particularly in some of the smaller islands. The hydrodynamic, the morphological changes can be really significant in a small time frame, and we need those funds to be mobilized to take action quickly. Otherwise, even later on, the situation might be different from when the project was initially, the formulation process went along. So there has to be a lot of changes. So quick and easy access. I know that there has to be a framework to it, but that is something we always advocate for. And then in terms of improving the climate resilience, as mentioned, the coastal resilience can be increased with proper, one thing I want to highlight initially is with proper data. So with the data, there's data acquisition, management, assimilation of it. So in particularly, we do have weather stations, we have tidal gauges, and so we are collecting significant data on that end, but we always need more data. For example, one of our projects which is currently ongoing, we will be deploying wave buoys. And so that will give us significant data on our wave heights, which can also, and this sort of information will contribute to better methodologies, implementing better methodologies, and for the design process. So that's data acquisition. Investing in that is also very important, and also having a centralized database to access these data is also something which we are currently working on. Because usually sometimes the ministries or agencies might work in silos, and there might be overlapping of data, and sometimes like not easy access to the data. So we have to rectify that, and we are working on it, of course. And with this data, then we can have this data-driven decision making, which is very important. So it is scientifically based with, of course, stakeholder involvement, and there will obviously be political interventions also there. But then the other thing is, in terms of sustainable solutions to adaptation, traditionally Maldives has always, our focus has been on gray infrastructure, like hard engineering solutions, which we define as. So that is, in terms of adaptability, that area is very lacking. So we are trying to do transformative adaptation initiatives and methodologies, which will try to engage more, study more, and implement more soft engineering measures, and also nature-based solutions. And nature-based solutions also has become some sort of buzzword recently, but it is very important. And nature-based solution also, we need the data and more research to understand what to implement in our situation. So particularly for our coastal areas. And in terms of nature-based solution and soft engineering measures, recent projects, we are trying to focus more on beach nourishment rather than revetments or seawalls. We are also trying to focus more on coral restoration, mangrove restoration. So these sort of things can attenuate the waves, and it can build our island resiliency to these changes. And in terms of adaptation, it's a more progressive, it's better methodologies, so we can sort of modify them in the future when needed. But with the hard engineering solutions, what usually happens is in the future it can cause more degradation to the coast. So that is an issue we are facing now, and rectifying that is also again another cost, and it's a very difficult process. So then with this implementation of these things, with the data I highlighted, so we are trying to identify the data gaps, requirements to do better design, to implement more of these measures. And so that will be, I think, how we will try to proceed with building resilience in the islands. And then for improving in terms of the tourism sector, as I mentioned, tourism sector already, if you can see the pictures and different things, the resorts usually will look aesthetically more pleasing if you look compared to inhabited islands. That is the case most of the time, because the resorts they are investing a lot of money, and then they do it periodically to do beach nourishment, so that you see all a very healthy beach with wide healthy beaches. It is because they're investing a lot of money to do the nourishments, and again, that also can be more sustainable if the nourishments and these things are done with proper data and studies, and so it's easier to rectify the issues, you know. And in terms of the development restrictions in resorts, we have frameworks. And for example, in the resort islands, you cannot have more than 3 stories of buildings. Also, 50% of the island has to be, there can be no construction there. So 50% has to be still for the nature. And as I mentioned in one of the other events, we also have the formulation of the ecotourism framework this year. So the ecotourism framework, and outside of the resorts, we are trying to implement more this ecotourism with nature parks, engaging more the local community in this. So it's not only the private sector, so we are also trying to expand it to the local communities and have tourism in the local islands also. So, and yeah, so with this, I'll finish really quickly. So we are trying to, our main focus here with the ecotourism is to have better management plans. So with these management plans also, the resiliency and adaptation will be incorporated in it, and the locals will be using the, with the tourist sector also, it will be sustainable use of these areas which are protected at different tiers. So that would be how we'll proceed. Yeah, thank you. Sorry for taking too long.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Deputy Minister. That was long, but was extremely interesting, and it is actually, good to hear that, for many wonderful small islands, what it takes is a very articulated approach to addressing the challenges of adaptation, of accelerating adaptation, and to build resilience of the coastal area. But I mean, in all your different different types of solutions, you have been constantly recalling the importance of designing policies on the basis of reliable and accurate data. This is not only to me, being an economist, and to me as Deputy Secretary General of the OECD, an organization that actually as a mission, to provide evidence-based policy advice for its members and partners, is fully understood and is very much appreciated. But I suspect that relying on accurate and reliable data may be also important for the financial actors that move in this area. And as I said before, the European Investment Bank is a leader, a lender for climate action worldwide. And I would like now, I'm pleased to have the opportunity of asking its Vice President now to tell us about the role of the bank with respect to the blue economies, and with respect to your recently launched climate adaptation plan. What are the priorities of the plan, and how the financing tools you are envisaging can have an impact?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Patricia. Allow me, before going to the EIB, to say just 2 words, just to underline one of the messages Minister Skylakakis said. I mean, before going to the EIB as a Vice President, I worked for the Ministry of Finance in Cyprus for 30 years, more than 30 years actually. And I have to share in just a minute a story that just in the heart of financial crisis for Cyprus, February 2013, somebody, a professor from a very famous university in Europe, came to see the minister to see the minister. And of course, the minister wasn't able to, and they asked him to come to see me. And this professor, actually, he made exactly the same introduction as you made today. And he was saying that, the sea level is rising, and Limassol in 150 years is going to be covered by the Mediterranean. I look at him and say, as I said, 2013, in the heart of the crisis, and I say, look, the minister for months now is trying to find the sources in order to keep the state running. I mean, we are in Greece, it's the same experience here. And what do you want me to do? What can we do? And what the minister said, Minister Skylakakis said that we need growth. We really have to be prepared in order to face climate change, in order to face what we were talking the last 2 days. In the last 2 days, we heard a lot about the crucial role oceans play in climate change and how the health of the oceans, coastal and marine ecostreams are threatened. And also, we heard that Minister also said it, that we need funding, and EIB is providing funding. I mean, we are as EU Climate Bank, and as you said, one of the largest contributors in green finance worldwide, We do have we do finance blue projects for many years now, and we are very actively in investing sustainable projects worldwide. The last, on average, we are lending 2.5 billion euros, and for climate investment projects. Actually, the whole climate, it's much more. I mean, it's around 16 billion euros, our climate projects. These are the 2.5 I said is in blue economy.
How much of it is?
Please.
How much of it is mitigation? How much adaptation?
I will reply immediately. Okay, let's it's our lending volume is last year in